The obsidian vault had been standing on the dead moon of Seven for 3,000 years. It was a massive black structure that looked like it had grown from the rock itself. No windows, no visible doors, just smooth, dark walls that seemed to drink in the light from the distant stars. Every civilization in the known galaxy had heard stories about this place. Every powerful empire had sent their best people to try and open it. None of them had ever succeeded. The empire had sent their greatest code breakers. These were beings with minds so advanced that they could solve mathematical problems that would take human computers 1,000 years to complete. They had stood before the vault for decades, trying every combination they could imagine. The vault had rejected them all. The collective had tried a different approach. They were a hive mind species, millions of individual creatures sharing one consciousness. They had sacrificed entire generations of their people trying to merge their thoughts with the vault's strange biolock system. They had failed too. The Confederacy had lost patience and tried to blast the vault open with weapons powerful enough to crack open planets. The vault did not even show a scratch. Now it was humanity's turn to try. Commander Morgan stood on the dusty surface of Seven and looked up at the vault. She was a tall woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too many strange things in the far corners of space. Behind her stood her crew from the starship Endeavour. They were the first humans to ever reach this sector of the galaxy. It had taken them 6 years of travel through uncharted space to get here. 6 years of fixing broken engines and negotiating with alien species who had never seen a human before. 6 years of wondering if the stories about the vault were even true. Now she knew they were true. The vault was real, and it was bigger than any of the stories had described. Her science officer, Ben Harper, walked up beside her. He was a thin man with messy hair and glasses that he kept pushing up his nose. He held a scanning device in his hands and was pointing it at the vault's surface. "The readings are unlike anything I have ever seen," Ben said. His voice was quiet with wonder. "The material is not metal, it is not stone, it is not any element in our database. Commander, this thing is old, really old. My scanner is saying it has been here for at least 1 billion years." Nodded slowly. She had expected something like this. The aliens they had met on their journey had warned them about the vault. They had told her that opening it was impossible. They had told her that trying would only bring frustration and failure. One old merchant had laughed at her when she said she wanted to try. "You humans are young and foolish," the merchant had said. "You think you can succeed where ancient empires have failed. The vault does not care about your ambition. It will reject you like it has rejected everyone else." Had smiled at the merchant and said nothing. She had learned a long time ago that the best response to people who doubted her was to simply prove them wrong. She walked toward the vault until she was standing right in front of it. Up close, she could see that the black surface was not completely smooth. There were tiny patterns etched into it, so small that they were almost invisible. They looked like circuits or veins, spreading across the wall like a network of frozen rivers. And in the center of the wall, at about chest height, there was a panel. The panel was the biolock. Had read all the reports about this lock. It was not like any security system humans had ever built. It did not scan fingerprints or retinas. It did not ask for passwords or codes. Instead, it read something deeper. It read the genetic signature of whoever touched it. It analyzed their DNA, their cellular structure, their very essence as a living being. And then, for reasons nobody understood, it rejected them. Every single time. 400 different species had tried to open the vault. Kings and queens, scientists and warriors, priests and criminals. The vault had treated them all the same way. It had scanned them, analyzed them, and then flashed a cold red light that meant no. Reached out her gloved hand and placed it on the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. The panel was cold even through her glove. She could feel a faint vibration coming from somewhere deep inside the vault, like a heartbeat that had been waiting for someone to wake it up. Then the panel lit up. A wave of blue light swept across her palm, moving from her fingertips to her wrist. Felt a tingling sensation, like static electricity dancing on her skin. The light pulsed once, twice, 3 times, and then something appeared on the panel that made her breath catch in her throat. It was an input field. 5 empty spaces arranged in a row, waiting for characters to be typed. "Commander," Ben said from behind her. His voice was shaking. "That is new. According to every record we have, the Vault has never done that before. It has never given anyone an input field. It just rejects them immediately." Stared at the 5 empty spaces. Her heart was beating fast now. She had come here expecting to fail like everyone else. She had told herself that she would try her best and accept whatever happened. But this was different. The Vault was not rejecting her. It was asking her a question. It wanted a password. "Get the others," said without taking her eyes off the panel. "Tell them to come down here and contact the Endeavor. I want Danny recording everything that happens from this point forward." Ben ran off to follow her orders, remained standing in front of the vault, her hands still resting on the panel, her mind racing with possibilities. 5 characters. What could the password possibly be? The vault had been built a billion years ago by beings that no longer existed. How could anyone know what word they had chosen to lock it? But someone had to know. The builders would not have created a lock that could never be opened. They had put this vault here for a reason. They had designed the biolock to wait for something specific. And now, after 3,000 years of rejecting every species in the galaxy, it had finally responded to a human. Did not believe in destiny. She believed in hard work and smart choices and a little bit of luck. But standing there on that dead moon, looking at those 5 empty spaces, she could not shake the feeling that something very strange was happening. Something that went beyond luck or coincidence. The vault had been waiting, and somehow, against all odds, it had been waiting for her. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Within 2 days of touching the biolock panel, ships from a dozen different species had arrived in orbit around 7. They came in all shapes and sizes. Sleek silver cruisers from the Empire, massive organic vessels from the Collective that looked like living creatures floating through space, angular warships from the Confederacy with weapons bristling from every surface. They all wanted to see what would happen next. They all wanted to be there when the vault finally opened. Stood in the main conference room of the Endeavor, facing a holographic display that showed the faces of alien ambassadors and from across the known galaxy. Ambassador of the Empire was speaking first. He was a tall reptilian being with silver scales that shimmered when he moved. His eyes were cold and calculating, and his voice carried the weight of an empire that had ruled 1,000 star systems for 10,000 years. "You will share the access codes with the Empire," said. It was not a request. It was a demand. "The vault and its contents belong to all civilized species. You cannot keep this discovery to yourselves." Remained calm. She had dealt with politicians and diplomats before. She knew that showing anger or fear would only make things worse. "We do not have any access codes," she said. "The panel responded to my touch. That is all. It gave us an input field with 5 empty spaces. We still do not know what to type." "Lies," hissed Myra of the Collective. She was an insect-like being with large compound eyes that reflected light in strange patterns. Her voice was actually many voices speaking at once, the sound of a million minds thinking together. "We sacrificed generations of our collective trying to interface with that lock. Millions of our kin died in the attempt. And you expect us to believe that it simply responded to you, a species that has barely left its home system." "I am only telling you what happened," replied. "You can believe it or not, that is your choice." The room erupted into arguments. Every ambassador started talking at once, demanding answers, making threats, proposing deals. Some wanted to form an alliance with humanity. Others wanted to take the vault by force. A few suggested that the humans should be removed from 7 entirely and that more experienced species should take over the investigation. Pilot Grace stood in the corner of the room, watching the chaos with sharp eyes. She was a small woman with black hair tied back in a tight ponytail. She had been flying ships since she was 16 years old, and she had developed a talent for reading people. She could tell when someone was lying. She could tell when someone was scared. And right now, she could tell that every alien in this room was absolutely terrified. After the meeting ended and the holographic display went dark, Grace walked over too. "They are not angry," Grace said quietly. "They are scared. They have spent thousands of years failing at this. If we succeed, it changes everything they believe about themselves." Nodded. She understood what Grace meant. The Empire believed they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. The collective believed their hive mind made them superior to all other forms of life. The Confederacy believed their military power made them unstoppable. But the Vault had rejected all of them. And now a young species from a small blue planet had triggered a response that none of them had ever seen. If humans could open the Vault, it would prove that advancement and power and ancient wisdom were not enough. It would prove that something else mattered, something these great civilizations did not have. That night went back to the Vault alone. Her crew had tried to stop her. Ben had warned her that it was dangerous. Grace had offered to come with her. Danny Cole, her communications officer, had insisted on at least monitoring her from the Endeavor, but had refused all of them. She needed to be alone with the Vault. She needed to think without distractions. The biolock panel glowed softly as she approached. The 5 empty spaces were still there, waiting patiently for an answer. Placed her hand on the panel and felt the same tingling sensation as before. The Vault was alive in some strange way. It was watching her. It was listening. She typed the first word that came to her mind. HUMAN. The letters appeared in the empty spaces, glowing with a soft white light. For a moment held her breath. Then the panel flashed red and the letters disappeared. Rejected. She tried again. EARTH. Red flash. Rejected. She tried the name of her ship. ENDVR. Red flash. Rejected. She tried numbers. 1 2 3 4 5. Red flash. Rejected. For hours she stood there in the cold darkness of 7, typing word after word into the panel. She tried words from every human language she knew. She tried scientific terms and mathematical constants. She tried the names of stars and planets and galaxies. Each time, the panel flashed red and rejected her attempt. By the time the sun rose over the distant horizon was exhausted. Her fingers were numb from the cold. Her mind was foggy from lack of sleep, but she refused to give up. The Vault had responded to her for a reason. There was an answer to this puzzle. She just had to find it. She sat down on a rock near the Vault and stared at the panel. 5 spaces, 5 characters. What could they possibly mean? The builders of this Vault had lived 1 billion years ago. They had created technology that still worked after all this time. They had designed a lock that could read genetic signatures and reject entire species. They were not stupid. They would not have chosen a random password. The answer had to mean something. But what? Closed her eyes and tried to clear her mind. She thought about everything she knew about the Vault. She thought about all the species that had tried and failed to open it. She thought about the pattern that kept repeating. Every species had typed something related to themselves. Their names, their achievements, their gods. They had all assumed that the password was about them. But maybe they were wrong. Maybe the password was not about the person trying to open the Vault. Maybe it was about something else entirely. Something that connected the builders to the present day. Something that had existed 1 billion years ago and still existed now. Opened her eyes and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of light years away, was a small blue planet called Earth. It was her home, the home of every human who had ever lived. And suddenly, she began to wonder if Earth was more important than anyone had ever realized. Danny Cole found sitting outside the Vault the next morning. He was carrying 2 cups of hot coffee from the Endeavor's galley and a tucked under his arm. Danny was a quiet man in his 30s with dark skin and calm brown eyes. He rarely spoke unless he had something important to say. But when he did speak, people listened. He had a way of seeing patterns that others missed, connections that seemed invisible until he pointed them out. He handed one of the coffee cups and sat down on the rock beside her. For a while, neither of them said anything. They just sat there in the light of 7, looking at the vault and sipping their drinks. The silence was comfortable. It was the kind of silence that exists between people who have spent years working together in the cramped spaces of a starship. Finally, Danny spoke. "I have been doing some research," he said, "looking through every piece of information we have about this vault, and I think I found something interesting." Looked at him, her eyes were tired but curious. "What did you find?" Danny pulled out his and showed her a series of charts and diagrams. "Every species that tried to open this vault made the same mistake," he said. "They all typed words related to themselves, their species name, their gods, their greatest leaders. They all assumed that the password was something that would prove their worthiness, something that would show the vault that they deserved to enter. And it rejected all of them," said. "Exactly. 400 species over 3,000 years, and every single one of them thought the same way. They thought the vault was testing them, judging them, waiting for someone who was smart enough or powerful enough or advanced enough to deserve its secrets." Frowned, "But maybe that is exactly what the vault is doing. Maybe none of those species were worthy." Danny shook his head slowly. "I do not think so. Look at the technology in this vault. The biolock can read genetic signatures from any species in the galaxy. It can analyze DNA structures that evolved on completely different planets. The beings who built this were incredibly advanced. They could have created any kind of test they wanted. Why would they create a test that no one could pass? Maybe they wanted to make sure the vault stayed closed forever. Then why put a password field at all? Why not just seal it completely? No, Commander. I think the vault was designed to be opened, but only by someone who understood what the builders were really looking for." Was quiet for a moment. She stared at the 5 empty spaces on the panel, thinking about Danny's words. So what were they looking for? Danny set down his coffee cup and pulled up a star map on his. It showed the spiral arm of the galaxy where most known civilizations had developed. Hundreds of star systems were marked with different colors, representing different species and empires. It was a crowded map, filled with overlapping territories and ancient trade routes. Every species in this sector of the galaxy evolved within a relatively small region, Danny said. All of them. They are all close together, cosmically speaking. They have been in contact with each other for millions of years. They have traded technology and culture and ideas. In many ways, they all developed together. But humans are different, said slowly, beginning to understand. Yes, Earth is located in the Orion Arm. It is far away from the main centers of galactic civilization. No ancient species ever visited it. No elder race ever seeded life there. Humans evolved completely independently from everyone else in the galaxy. Felt a strange sensation in her chest. It was like the feeling she got when she was about to make a jump to faster than light speed, a sense of being on the edge of something enormous. You think the vault was waiting for someone from outside the usual area, someone who developed alone. Danny nodded. I think the builders knew about Earth a billion years ago. I think they planted life there deliberately, in a place where it would grow without any outside influence. And I think they designed this vault to wait for the descendants of that life to find it. But why? What makes humans so special? Maybe nothing, or maybe everything. Danny leaned forward, his eyes intense. Think about it, Commander. Every other species in the galaxy typed their own name into the lock. They thought about themselves first. They assumed the universe revolved around them. But humans are different. We grew up alone. We spent our entire history looking up at the stars and wondering if anyone else was out there. We never assumed we were the center of anything. We always knew we were small. Stood up and walked toward the vault. Her heart was beating faster now. She placed her hand on the biolock panel and felt it pulse with energy beneath her fingers. The 5 empty spaces appeared again, waiting for an answer. She thought about everything Danny had said. She thought about all the species that had come before her, typing their proud names into the panel, expecting the vault to recognize their greatness. And she thought about Earth, that small blue dot in the vastness of space, the home she had left behind years ago, the place where humanity had taken its first steps under unfamiliar stars. The password was not about proving anything. It was not about worthiness or power or advancement. It was about understanding where you came from. It was about remembering your home. Typed slowly, one letter at a time. EARTH. The panel did not flash red. Instead, it began to glow with a deep golden light. The ground beneath's feet trembled. A low harmonic tone filled the air, a sound so deep that she felt it more than heard it. And then, after 3,000 years of silence, the obsidian vault began to open. The massive black walls split apart like the petals of a flower. Ancient mechanisms that had been frozen for billions of years groaned back to life. Dust and debris fell from surfaces that had not moved since before the first civilizations arose. And behind the opening walls saw something that made her gasp. Light, pure, golden light, spilling out from the heart of the vault like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. It was warm on her face. It was beautiful beyond words, and it was welcoming her inside. Danny ran up beside her, his mouth hanging open in shock. "You did it," he whispered. "You actually did it." Did not answer. She just stood there, staring into the light, wondering what secrets had been waiting for humanity all this time. The inside of the vault was nothing like had expected. She had imagined dusty corridors and ancient machinery covered in the grime of ages. Instead, she found herself walking through a space that seemed to exist outside of normal reality. The walls glowed with soft, golden light that had no visible source. The floor was smooth and warm beneath her boots, almost like walking on living skin. And the corridor stretched ahead of her into distances that should not have been possible within the vault's exterior walls. Ben Harper walked beside her, his scanning equipment going crazy with readings he could not understand. Grace followed behind them, her hand resting on the weapon at her hip, even though she knew it would be useless against whatever had built this place. Danny stayed at the entrance, maintaining communication with the Endeavor and watching for any movement from the alien ships in orbit. "The dimensions are wrong," Ben muttered, staring at his scanner in confusion. "The inside of this vault is bigger than the outside, much bigger. We have walked at least a kilometer already, but we should have passed through the exterior wall a long time ago." "Maybe the builders knew how to bend space," Grace suggested. "Fold it up like paper so they could fit more room inside." "That is theoretically possible, but the energy required would be enormous, beyond anything we have ever seen." Kept walking. She was not interested in theories right now. She wanted answers. The vault had responded to her specifically. It had opened for the word Earth. There had to be a reason. There had to be something inside that explained why the builders had waited so long for humanity to arrive. The corridor eventually opened into a massive circular chamber. The ceiling stretched so high above them that it disappeared into darkness. The walls were covered in images that seemed to move and shift when looked at them directly. They were not paintings or carvings. They were something more advanced. Three-dimensional projections frozen in time, showing scenes that made heart stop in her chest. She saw Earth. Not the Earth she knew, with its cities and highways and satellites orbiting overhead. This was an ancient Earth. Dinosaurs walked across vast plains. Oceans teemed with creatures that had been extinct for millions of years. Volcanoes erupted and mountains rose and continents slowly drifted across the surface of the planet. The builders had been watching Earth. They had documented it. They had known about it long before humanity ever existed. "My God," Ben breathed. "These images are billions of years old. The dating on my scanner is going crazy. Some of these show Earth before life even existed there. Walked slowly around the chamber, looking at the images on the walls. She saw the first single-celled organisms appearing in the primordial oceans. She saw fish crawling onto land for the first time. She saw the rise of the dinosaurs and their sudden extinction when an asteroid struck the planet. She saw early mammals hiding in the shadows of a changed world. And finally, she saw the first humans standing upright on the African savanna, looking up at the stars with wonder in their eyes. The builders had been watching the entire time. They had seen every step of Earth's evolution, every triumph, every catastrophe, every small miracle that had led to humanity's existence. At the center of the chamber stood a simple pedestal. It was made of the same strange material as the rest of the vault, but it glowed brighter than anything around it. And on top of the pedestal sat an object that drew attention like a magnet pulling iron. It was a sphere. About the size of a human head, it floated just above the surface of the pedestal, rotating slowly in place. Inside the sphere could see swirling patterns of light that looked like galaxies. Stars were born and died within its depths. Nebulae expanded and contracted like breathing lungs. It was as if someone had captured the entire universe and compressed it into a single beautiful object. As approached the sphere, a voice filled the chamber. It was not a sound that came through her ears. It was more like a thought that appeared directly in her mind, translated into words she could understand. "You have come," the voice said, "the children of the blue world, the inheritors of the final seed." Stopped walking and looked around. There was no one else in the chamber except her crew. The voice was coming from the vault itself, or perhaps from the sphere, or perhaps from somewhere even stranger. "Who are you?" asked aloud. Her voice echoed in the vast space. "What is this place? Why did you build it?" "We were the first," the voice replied. "When the universe was young and empty, we walked among the stars. We were alone for millions of years, the only intelligent life in all of existence. We searched for others like us, but we found only silence. So we decided to create what we could not find." Images began to appear in the air around. She saw beings unlike anything she had ever imagined. Tall and slender, with bodies that seemed to shift between solid and liquid. Their faces were calm and wise, filled with a sadness that came from knowing they were alone in the cosmos. "We seeded life across the galaxy," the voice continued. "We visited thousands of worlds and planted the building blocks of evolution. We hoped that one day intelligence would arise, creatures who could think and dream and wonder, creatures who could keep us company in the vastness of space." "And it worked," said. "There are hundreds of intelligent species in the galaxy now." "Yes, many seeds grew into mighty civilizations, but they all made the same mistake. They believed themselves to be the center of existence. They looked at the stars and saw only mirrors reflecting their own greatness. They never learned to see beyond themselves." Thought about the alien ambassadors in their ships above 7. She thought about Ambassador demanding access to the vault's secrets. She thought about all the species who had typed their own names into the biolock, expecting the universe to bow before them. "But Earth was different," said slowly. "We did not develop like the others. Earth was our last seed, the one we planted with the greatest care in the most isolated corner of the galaxy. We wanted to see if life, left truly alone, would develop differently. And you did. You are the first species to type the name of your home instead of the name of your kind, the first to show humility before the vastness of space." The sphere on the pedestal pulsed with light, felt its warmth on her face, gentle and inviting. "This is why we built the vault," the voice said. "Not to test intelligence or power or technology, but to wait for someone who remembered where they came from, someone who understood that they were not the center of the universe, someone humble enough to inherit what we left behind." Stepped forward and reached out her hand toward the sphere. It felt like the most natural thing in the world, like coming home after a long journey, like finding the answer to a question she had been asking her whole life. "What is inside the sphere?" she asked. "Everything," the voice replied. "Everything we learned in our millions of years of existence, every secret of the universe, and a map to every vault we ever created, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for those who are ready to find them." His fingers touched the sphere, and in that moment she saw the truth of what the builders had left behind. The moment touched the sphere, knowledge flooded into her mind like water rushing through a broken dam. She saw star maps that showed every corner of the galaxy. She saw blueprints for technologies that humanity had never even imagined. She saw the locations of hundreds of other vaults, scattered across distant worlds, each one containing secrets that could transform civilizations. And she saw something else, something that made tears stream down her face even though she did not fully understand why. She saw the builders taking their final journey. They were dying. Their species had lived for so long that their bodies were simply wearing out. There was no cure, no way to extend their existence any further, but instead of fatting away in despair, they had chosen to leave a gift for those who would come after them. They had built the vaults. They had planted the seeds of life across the galaxy, and they had created the biolocks to ensure that only the right species would inherit their legacy. Then they had gone to sleep among the stars, waiting for the end that they knew was coming. Pulled her hand back from the sphere and found herself kneeling on the floor of the chamber. Ben and Grace were at her side, holding her up, asking if she was okay. She could hear their voices, but they seemed very far away. Her mind was still processing everything she had seen, everything she had learned. "I am fine," she said finally. Her voice was hoarse. "I just needed a moment." "What happened?" Ben asked. "You touched that sphere and then you just collapsed. Your eyes were glowing, actually glowing like there was a light inside your skull." Stood up slowly, using Grace's arm for support. She looked at the sphere floating on its pedestal. It looked the same as before, but now she understood what it really was. It was not just an object. It was a gift. An inheritance passed down across 1 billion years from one species to another. "The sphere showed me everything," said. "The builders left it for us, for whoever opened the vault. It contains all their knowledge, all their technology, and the locations of every other vault they ever created." Grace let out a low whistle. "That is a lot of power. The other species are going to lose their minds when they find out." "They already know something happened." Danny's voice crackled over the communication device. "The alien ships in orbit are going crazy. They detected an energy surge when you touched the sphere. Ambassador is demanding to speak with you. He says if you do not come out immediately, the Empire will consider it an act of war." Almost laughed. After everything she had just experienced, the threats of the Empire seemed so small, so petty. The builders had existed for millions of years. They had seeded life across entire galaxies, and in the end they had chosen humanity to receive their final gift, not because humans were the strongest but because they were the only species humble enough to type the name of their home instead of their own name. She picked up the sphere. It was warm in her hands, pulsing gently with inner light. Then she walked out of the chamber, through the long corridor and back toward the entrance of the vault. Ben and Grace followed close behind her. Outside, the surface of 7 was no longer empty. Shuttles had landed all around the vault. Alien soldiers in battle armor stood in formation, their weapons pointed at the entrance. Ambassador was at the front of the group, his silver scales bristling with anger. "What did you take from the vault?" demanded as emerged into the light. His eyes locked onto the sphere in her hands. "That object belongs to all civilized species. You will hand it over immediately." Looked at him calmly. She had faced down space pirates and hostile aliens and broken engines in the middle of nowhere. An angry diplomat did not scare her. "No," she said simply. Scales turned a darker shade of silver. "You would start a war over that trinket. The Empire has 1,000 warships. Your species has barely left your home system. You cannot possibly win." "I am not going to fight you," replied, "and I am not going to keep this for myself. I am going to share it with everyone." The alien soldiers looked confused, narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Explain." Held up the sphere so everyone could see it. "This contains a map to every vault the builders ever created, hundreds of them scattered across the galaxy, each one filled with knowledge and technology beyond anything we have ever seen." "Then give it to us. The Empire has the resources to access those vaults properly." "No, the vaults will not open for you. They will not open for any of you." Looked around at the assembled aliens, and a dozen other species, all of them staring at her with a mixture of anger and confusion. The builders designed the locks to test humility, to see if the species trying to enter understood that they were not the center of the universe. That is why everyone who typed their own name was rejected. That is why the password was Earth. "That is absurd," hissed Myra. "You expect us to believe that the key to unlimited power is simply being humble." "I do not expect you to believe anything. I expect you to try and fail just like you did here. The builders knew what they were doing. They spent millions of years watching civilizations rise and fall. They understood that power without humility leads to destruction. So they created a test, a filter. Only those who approach the vaults with the right mindset will be able to open them." Turned and began walking back toward the Endeavor's shuttle. Her crew fell into step beside her. The alien soldiers made no move to stop them. They were too confused, too uncertain about what was happening. "I will send the map to every species in the galaxy," called back over her shoulder. "Everyone will know where the vaults are located, but only those who have learned the lesson will be able to claim what is inside." Behind her, the obsidian vault began to close. Its massive doors swung shut with the same smooth motion that had opened them. Within moments, the vault was sealed again, looking exactly as it had for the past 3,000 years. Cold, silent, waiting. But now everything was different. Humanity had proven something to the galaxy, not that they were stronger or smarter or more advanced, but that they were humble, that they remembered where they came from, that they understood their place in the vastness of space. As the shuttle lifted off from Seven's surface, looked down at the sphere in her hands. The future of the galaxy was inside this small object. Secrets that could transform civilizations, technologies that could end wars or start them, wisdom that had been gathered over millions of years by beings who had seen the rise and fall of countless species. It was a heavy responsibility, but was not afraid. The builders had chosen humanity for a reason. They had waited 1 billion years for the children of Earth to find them, and now that wait was over. The stars stretched out before the Endeavor like a road leading to infinity. Somewhere out there, hundreds of vaults waited to be discovered, hundreds of treasures waited to be claimed, and humanity would be the ones to find them. Not because they were the greatest species in the galaxy, but because they never forgot that they came from a small blue planet called Earth.